May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be delightful unto you, O Holy One. Amen. So the women arrive at the tomb where the body of Jesus has been laid. They are ready to engage in what poet Emily Dickinson calls the solemnest of industries enacted upon earth, the sweeping up after death. And truth be told, each of us, in our own way, have come here this morning to do the same thing. There are other reasons, of course, to be here. The Easter music, which is so fabulous. Family tradition. Perhaps to please the parents or the wife. It's not too much to ask, is it? And all these are good enough reasons to be here for sure, and we are glad that you're here. But whether it's top of mind or not, Easter morning is a day to come to terms with death in all of its various guises. Before the gospel is fairy tale, it is tragedy. You can't get to Easter except through Good Friday. A good man, God's prophet, a lover of the downtrodden, has been executed. Bad things happen to good people. Evil is a dimension of human existence, and in one form or another, we've all tasted it, let's face it. We're here, at least in part, because we hope against hope that tragedy and meaninglessness will not have the final word, because if they do have the final word, then how do we find the courage to carry on in life? We're here because life is not fair. Jesus has been crucified. And the crucifixion stands for every indignity and everything in this world that has ever brought us face to face with hopelessness. To say the least, it challenges a superficial commitment to cheerful optimism about life. We're here this morning to do our own sweeping up after death. Some of you who come here on a regular basis know that I've been doing a series of Lenten sermons based on Oscar-nominated films, or films that I think should have been nominated but were passed over for one poor reason or another. And Gran Torino falls into the latter category for me. Walt Kowalski, a retired Ford worker, knew about death. He's the protagonist in Gran Torino. It's played beautifully by Clint Eastwood. And his life is drenched in death. He fought in the Korean War, and it lingers in his soul through post-traumatic stress syndrome. He knows what it means to kill or be killed. He's come face to face with evil. His wife has just died, and he is in grief. In Walt's life, death has shaped a bitter, emotionally constricted, and racist 78-year-old man. And the opening scene takes place at another funeral, at his wife's funeral. Walt sits there bristling against the pious platitudes of a young priest whom Walt thinks has never himself tasted death, so he has no right to be talking about it. Walt even dislikes his own children, whom he regards as self-indulged and self-involved yuppies. His only loves are his Labrador dog, Daisy, and his car, which is a Gran Torino, which he has lovingly restored. His sweeping up after death comes in the form of compulsive attention to his lawn, to his home, to his beloved car. It's nothing that will help him move on in life, but Walt, a long time ago, has decided that the bitter sting of death is the ultimate reality. His wife's death was just the final nail in the coffin. Death reigned supreme in Walt Kowalski's life. Ironically, Walt the racist lives next door to a Hmong family. He dislikes them intensely, mostly because they don't take care of their yard. But the other part is racism, pure and simply. He doesn't get it that these are the Vietnamese people who actually fought with the Americans, not against the Americans in the Vietnamese War. And when death once again makes an appearance in Walt's life in the form of a gang of thugs, Walt is reluctantly drawn back into life. The gang is forcefully recruiting Walt's young neighbor, and they're beating him up on his front lawn, and for Walt that is a no-no. You don't mess with Walt's front lawn. And then he becomes Tao, the young man. His name is Tao. He becomes his protector and his mentor. And he finds a higher purpose and an opportunity to redeem both himself and the young man. And in an ending that is the best ending that I've seen in a long time in a movie, and I'm not going to tell it to you because I don't want to spoil it for you, Walt finds a way to save both himself and his young friend. And there's powerful religious symbolism involved. The film could have been called The Redemption of Dirty Harry. And so both Gran Torino and this gospel story here this morning have surprise endings. You come to the end and you're expecting death, death, and more death. You're expecting the Magnum 44s to start blasting away in a display of righteous violence. And we expect to leave the film with that need in us for vengeance, somewhat satisfied, but it's not. I'll give you this much of the ending. It's not what happens. The women arrive at the tomb with their embalming spices in hand, ready to anoint a corpse and concede the triumph of death over life. But that's not what happens. They're greeted by this mysterious young man who says that he's not here. He's been raised. He's gone ahead of you to Galilee. Meet him there. Now you need to know this about Mark's Gospel. It has two endings. It has an original ending, that's the one we heard this morning. And then it's got a longer additional ending that was written much later. And in the original story, did you notice that there are no eyewitnesses to the resurrection? In the longer ending, there are eyewitnesses. It seems as though Mark, in his original version, is more comfortable with the mystery of resurrection, not the resurrection of a man 2,000 years ago, but resurrection is a metaphor for new life. Resurrection is not physical resuscitation, friends. And I agree with those who claim that if there had been a video camera recording the events in that tomb, it would not have caught any images of Jesus standing up and tearing off his grave cloths. Mark just ends with this mysterious young man dressed in white, telling women that they're looking for Jesus in all the wrong places. But they're going to need to take his word for it because there are no eyewitnesses, just as we have no eyewitnesses that we can turn to. My faith, my fundamental orientation to life, the way I make meaning of life, does not hinge on a belief in the physical resuscitation of Jesus' corpse. But resurrection as a central metaphor is absolutely pivotal. Resurrection points to a sacred, loving presence at loose in this universe to bring life out of death, to redeem evil, and to work ceaselessly to raise up all of creation to its full stature and its full glory, and it never stops working this loving presence.